soon. So I've been looking into the sports thing in particular, which is honestly very interesting because I didn't realize how many currently like female athletes have disorders of sexual development already, which has been really interesting to learn about. I can't I'll write about this, so I won't give all the specifics, but basically, you know, there's things like CAH, congenital, what is it, adrenal hyperplasia, where girls get bathed in a heavy amount of androgens during fetal development, and they end up having more male specific play patterns and things like that. Those women are apparently like 200x overrepresented in elite sports. So there's there's already like interesting things here. And then there's also women like Caster Semenya, who's that runner who female identified at birth, all of that, has a vagina, probably has XY chromosome. So there's a lot more. I mean, these are all really small numbers, but the reality is that when you get to the elite level, because of tail effects, you know, you see more of this stuff pop up. And so learning about that has made me like a little bit more confused about how we should think about the sports stuff. But anyway, it's
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. I wonder just like you know, the idea of having male and female cutoff sports is just, I think, like a rough, it's kind of like the age of consent, you know. I think there's a little bit of permeability, but you know, opening up female sports to male players, because essentially that's what they are. I mean, obviously, if you really knew someone with female hormones, it's, you know, if it starts, you know, in puberty, but we wouldn't want to do that to children, so you kind of, it is really complex. I understand why we're writing about this, you know, I'm thinking about it out loud, but it just,
no,
I
that's one of
don't.
the things that scares me with the youth stuff is that when you think about it, you're like, okay, well, like you said, there's some ambiguity around who, there's very small, like it's not super ambiguous, but there's some ambiguity, and there's obviously natural variation where some women just have more testosterone or whatever. What I get nervous about is that we don't want to end up with regulations which encourage kids to transition really early because they otherwise won't be able to be elite athletes, right? So we don't want to be, even if that might actually make sense from a biological point of view, like we don't want to say trans women can participate at the elite level only if they started their transition at age 11, because what kind of incentives does that create? So, and again, this is like we're talking about 2% of people or 1% of people in elite sports, which is like already 1% of people. It is kind of interesting how I think it's just a naturally interesting topic, and that's part of why it's become what it is. Like it just, everybody can relate to and understand gender and sex and have an opinion on it. And I think maybe that's why this is part of why this is blown up, in addition to it just being a useful cleaving point. But anyway.
Yeah, I think it's also like interesting, especially for the right, because you know the question of women's sports has always been, you know, there's this all the conversation about women's soccer, why it's not pay gap issues and all this type of stuff. So the right was just waiting for something to really kind of galvanize this conversation. Lo and behold, we have the perfect opportunity to bring up all this stuff, you know, the big differences in the sports performance between men and women, which I mean, kind of everyone intuitively knows, but you know, it's not polite to talk about, and now we have to talk about it because, you know, men and women's sports. Yeah, it's it's
No, and
interesting.
it is a real reversal, right? Because women's sports was such a left-wing issue of getting women their own space to practice sports because women deserve a chance and we need equal funding and all of this kind of stuff.
Yeah,
And
Title
it's just,
IX.
it is really ironic that this has become a right-wing thing that we need to protect women's sports.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, some right wingers are a little bit more honest, and they say they don't really care about women's sports. I mean, respect to those people. But the thing is, you know, if you're like a more kind of a traditional, you know, college style dad of daughters, you know, the core boomer con still cares about women's sports because his daughters probably play some sort of sports in college, and he wants his daughters to get into college and possibly maybe not pay for it. Yeah, so there's very important elements there.